Good morning, everyone. Up on the bench today, we have an Arabic oud that I had done some repairs to a few days ago, and the customer decided that he'd like to have a new set of strings on, and I think that's a good idea because the way the previous owner had strung this is not only not like a traditional oud, but not like a traditional anything. The strings are kind of all over the place, so we're going to put a fresh set on here, and instead of doing it in traditional Arabic oud style, which requires some crossing of strings and pegs, we're going to do it kind of like a 12-string guitar. Strings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, 6, 7. And this will be an 11-string instrument instead of 12, which is traditional for the oud. This one is unusual in in fact that it has 12 pegs, but it's only set up for 11 strings. It has a single slot at the nut here, and then at the bridge there's only one hole cut instead of a pair like the rest. So ouds and lutes are typically really hard to work on because they roll around. So I made myself a kind of an oud holder, and I left enough room exposed to get to the strings, so that allows it to lay somewhat flatter. And then I put a kind of a roll of tape up here to hold things in place at this end a little bit. So first thing I like to do is take everything off, all the strings off, and I want to clean the fingerboard and clean the peg box and make sure all the pegs are fitting properly, and give them a good dressing so that they move freely in the peg holes. And I'm not going to go too much further. There's a little bit of pitting in the fingerboard, but we'll leave that alone. The action is just perfect, so I'm not going to do anything with that. The nut, I leave that alone because I don't, unless it's actually, causing a problem with the strings passing over. These hard right angle nuts are typically pretty fussy. So once everything is set properly and things are passing smoothly, I like to just kind of leave it be. You see that 11th string is all the way up here, so we're going to put that down here. So we'll string it up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We'll skip this peg all the way to the top here. Okay? So first things first, let's get all these strings off of here. We'll just loosen them up. And I'm giving the old push in too because I don't want them flying out on me when I start taking strings off. And all the strings are now off. And I'm going to give this fingerboard a little bit of a cleaning and an oiling. Use some fresh steel wool on here. Put a little alcohol on first. Okay. Let's start off with a nice clean board. And it looks like this board has been painted or finished or something, so we don't have to apply anything to it. Just keep it nice and clean. And that's that. I do want to, while I'm here at the nut, put a little bit of pencil lube in there. Clean up that excess a little bit. All right. So now I like to do the pegs. So I'm going to take them out and inspect each one, make sure that it's working smoothly, and then I'll dress it. So these all feel like they're working pretty smoothly. There's no wobbles or actual, high and low spots, as it were, or wide and narrow spots. Yeah, pretty pleased with all that. Okay, so the next thing I like to do, get it so that when the string grabs it in the center, it's not so burnished. And I'll just do this right up to where it meets the peg box, so nothing at this end actually gets hit too hard. And you see that creates a little roughness on the inside, and it allows the string to catch it pretty well. It also rounds any little bit of kind of irregularity that may have found its way into the peg. And that, okay, so we're not quite finished, but that's nice. That's working even a little smoother. And now I'm going to apply some peg compound. This is really pretty hard, actually. And it kind of creates a stickiness and a smoothness at the same time. It helps to take up any loose areas in the peg hole where there might not be a perfect fit, and provides a lubricant, and that's just working just as smooth as silk in both directions. Very pleased. Yes, I like this peg dough. Okay, so let's just move our way around the line. I'll take one at a time and put it back in its respective hole. All right, turn it back over. In order to get the most out of these restringing and future tuning, we have to employ techniques from both the classical guitar school and the violin school of stringing. And at this end, it's kind of a classical guitar tie. At this end, obviously, it's a violin tie. So if you don't know how to do those, I'll be happy to walk you through that right now. There's a little bit of a variation for the oud and the lute that you don't see on the classical guitar, and I'll explain that to you in just a second. We also have our guide here that gives you the different gauges of strings and which one they are, and they're color-coded, which is nice that Diodario always does that. So they've got little color labels on each pair that tells us which one goes where according to this legend here. So typically their first strings are always silver and the last ones are always brass, so that's kind of cool. So the first pair is silver, and you'll notice that the gauges are quite small. This is just a 0.5 millimeter, 0.022 inches in diameter, which is really, really narrow, and I'll show it to you. It's this little guy right here, just barely enough fishing line to catch a minnow. Okay, so we're going to do these both at the same time, pretty much. So we'll both do this end down here first, and then we'll bring it up to the top. And first thing I do is I burn a little knot in the bottom with a lighter, and just to create a fail-safe. So if it does slip, it'll stop at the knot. And I do this with pretty much every nylon string. It's just a nice thing because as you're pulling on tension, if it does slide, slips through that knot, you don't have to start all over again. It'll stop right there. So run through the other end where the knot isn't. Make sure I'm at the very last one. I don't want to cross over holes here. Typically, on a classical guitar, we'll bring the tail under the string and then bring it around this way. And if you can picture this, I'm going to bring it underneath this outer knot here, okay? And then I'm going to do that twice. So it's just a little double loop, you might say, okay? And that will be plenty for a classical guitar to hold everything in place. I'm going to take it a step further and add a third loop here, okay? Because this is a very thin string, so I want to be sure that there's enough tie there that it doesn't want to kind of creep. So I'm also going to, and this is just something that I do, not everyone does, but because I already have my little knot here, I'm going to minimize the amount of actual tie-off tail that I use and just kind of bring it to almost nothing. And there's 3 of them, okay? And you can see that it's down to pretty much the nub. And then I'll bring that just to the very top edge of the bridge, okay? There's no saddle to bring any more height, so we're going to go all the way up this way. going to have some excess, obviously, and we want to be sure we're in the right peg hole. All right, bring it around once, just to get the end. Come here now. Don't do that to me. So I'm keeping tension on this end too, maybe, because these are nylon, they're going to stretch anyway. So the rule of thumb is all of the strings that go on this side of the peg box will wind toward that way. The windings will find their way toward this edge of the box. All the strings on this side will find their windings going this way, toward this edge of the peg box. And we create one crossover at this end here, okay, like that. Hold it in place. Bring the peg all the way around so you can see it again on the other side. Get that crossover in good. Okay. And it's already, becoming taut. I can feel it. So I want to do this twice. I want to have two of these crossovers on the peg. And I see this is going to be a little troublesome. So I'll get just a little tool in there to pull it through. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to bring that up and push in at the same time. And that's coming up very nicely. So in order to avoid having it bind up in the peg box and get too close to the peg box by excessive windings going in this direction, what we do is loosen the peg a little bit, pull out so that it brings those string windings toward the center, and then retighten. So you have lots of room between where it actually crosses over initially here and the peg box itself. And we don't, if it gets bound up in that peg box, then there's very likelihood it will break. Okay, and I've got two windings going over the tail, and that's plenty. I don't really need any more, but I'll take another one just because it's convenient to put it in there. Why not have a third stabilizer? Okay, so there's, and there we have it. Okay, so I like to kind of cut the tails off as I go too. I'll leave a little excess here because I don't want all that stuff flopping around as I'm going, especially if I have lots and lots of strings to do. So I give myself enough that if I have to redo, I'll have room, but I don't think I will. So that's nice and tight. Okay, here's the second one. I'll find the knot. It's at this end here. Bring it up right next to its brother. Okay, same thing here. Minimize the amount of tail. We're going to go under the string first. I know it's a little confusing. And then we'll bring it around the top. Kind of tie a loop in it like that. Just a loop. And then a second loop. And at this point you can kind of manipulate things so you can shorten the tail as much as you want to so you don't have to redo that burn in the end, that little ball that we burned in the end. Give it 3 turns on this one. Okay. Same thing up here. So I'm pushing it over here. I'm going to manipulate this as I go. This is probably a good time to clip. Okay, and it's pretty much the same process going up both sides of the fingerboard. So I'll do some and then I'll come back. I've got the first 4 on there, and now that I'm going to 5 and 6, it changes over to a wound string. And these have a silk core with an aluminum winding, so they're kind of nice. They sound good. So these I do a little bit differently. Let's see if I can bring this up a little closer. Make sure I'm in the right hole, of course. Now this one, I bring it over and I bring it on, bring the bottom loop around again this way from the underside. But instead of doing the windings this way, I just simply push this through the tail here. Okay, put my fingernail right there to hold everything in place. Kind of draw it up tight. So then I just have a single looping wrap that holds in place from behind the tie block, in the back of the tie block, and I'll bring it around this way so you can see what I'm looking at here. Okay, so it's really simple and very strong, and this is the way we do classical guitar bass tuners, bass strings, and then we'll continue right up the same line that we were on. All right. And bring it around once. And same with the others, though. We'll just do a little bit of a crossover on the first time initially, and then after that it can be yes or no. It doesn't have to be crossed over. Okay, so it doesn't take a lot, but it does take an accurate crossover. And like I said, if I can get 2, I'll get 2, but I don't want it to get too close to the peg box. There. Very nice. Okay, so that's how we do those. Very simple, straight ahead. I'm just getting some general tightness on these. These aren't the final pitches, but that's okay. So the strings are on, but before I go to tune it and everything like that, I want to make sure that there's no extra slack anywhere, that it has to stretch through. And I'll start at the anchors down here. So I'm going to push this out. Anything that's excess, get it out of there. Anything excess, anything that's loose or kind of sloppy or wide open loops and things, let's get them out. I'm pulling on the string as I'm adjusting these ties down here. Okay, and this is really helpful in all nylon string guitar type things, ukuleles and classical guitars and anything with a nylon string. This is always a good starting point. Get all that excess down to the ties. Okay, so it's not going to move anymore. Then we'll give them a tug up at the top here. I don't want to pull too hard on these baby strings here because they're really very small diameter and they will break. So I'm just giving them a good tug all the way up and down and put it in a general pitch. I'll do the same thing on the second string and all of them. Just give them a nice tug. Bring it up to it. Kind of a general pitch, and then the same thing with all the rest. So I've already taken care of this end here. I'm just trying to pull the excess out of the center. We know that we've got good anchors up at this end, so we're not going to sweat that. Just getting a little more of the excess out. This will take a while. I mean, it never comes out immediately, but it does. You can get a lot of it out initially. Okay, and they should hold their pitch to tune, and they might even stay in because it's not a real high tension string on these. They have a pretty reasonable amount. So conveniently, they've written on the package here too what the pitches are. So the first string is a D, the fourth string is an A. So we're assuming that this is going to be A 440, the third and fourth. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to bring that to an A. 220. Okay, so that's our starting point. It's an A. And then above that we have a D, which is now you notice the pitches that I have here are probably higher than what I need, which is nice because we can drop them down into. Now that's the one that was problematic from earlier. It's a little bigger on this side and it's slipping. So I'm going to use a product called Peg Drops. Let's see if I've got it. There we go. And it's a peg, kind of a freezing compound. It'll allow it to stick a little bit more. And I'm going to put it just on this side here, just a drop, and that'll spread itself around. See how that helps to keeps it still. Okay, and below our B, we have an F sharp, which we're almost there now. And then a C sharp. And there's our lute. It's roughly in tune, but let's get the tuner after it, which I can't do right now because I'm filming, so I have to get to my phone to use the actual tuner on it. But that's the idea. You get it. I'm using my ear for pitches. Everything's tuned in fourths. But it's obviously slipping and sliding, so I have to do a little more tugging, a little more fine tuning, and things should settle in. The player will play it for 2 or 3 days, and everything should be just fine. So there's how we restring an oud. The lute is done very much the same way, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below, or if you feel free to contact us here at Lark in the Morning. I'm Eric Hamilton, and we'll see you soon.